Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our first of a series of international leader webinars. We still have attendees signing up and coming into the room, so we'll get started in just a moment. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Martino, Senior Director of Operations and International Affairs here at Helicopter Association International. Thanks for being with us here today, and welcome to the first of a series of international leadership webinars. The goal of this leadership series is to keep you informed on the issues and the events that are important to the international vertical lift industry. The idea for the series came from the leaders of the global rotorcraft associations that participate in the HEI International Partnership Program. You'll hear a little bit more about that program in just a few moments. The focus of today's webinar is on international collaboration and the benefits it has on our industry, with a particular attention to our industry's response to the global COVID pandemic. During our one-hour webinar, you'll hear about collaboration and partnership programs that are helping our industry to become more effective and globally aligned. Our panelists will also share some real-world examples related to how these partnerships have helped enhance the industry's contribution to the humanitarian effort driven by the COVID pandemic. With us today, we have leaders of 4 of the largest rotorcraft industry associations. We are honored to have as panelists, in the order that you'll see them, Mr. Jim Viola, President and CEO of Helicopter Association International, Mr. Peter Muller, Chairman of the European Helicopter Association, Mr. Tim Fashon, Chief Executive Officer of the British Helicopter Association, and Ms. Loreto Moraga, President of the Chilean Helicopter Association. So let's go ahead and get started. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jim Viola, President of the Helicopter Association International. Jim, if you'd join us. Hey, Jim.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the introduction. Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you today for our first International Leaders webinar. I'm glad you're able to join us for this event. Over the last year, I think we'd all agree that our international industry has seen some dramatic changes, and in many cases felt some pretty harsh impacts from the coronavirus pandemic. I hear from HII members quite often telling me what they're experiencing and how they're dealing with these issues. It's very encouraging for me to know there are so many great people out there with innovative ideas to keep the rotors turning and keep their operations safe. Despite everything that's going on, you keep flying safely. And with good reason. Helicopter operations continue because we provide critical services and humanitarian aid across the globe each and every day. And believe me, society gets it. The people we serve appreciate and understand the value of helicopters. They get that rotorcraft bring to the table remarkable and unique capabilities. They get that rotorcraft can accomplish tasks that no other air vehicles can even attempt, and that they get that the rotorcraft are safe and reliable. And that's all because of your efforts. You may have heard me say that before, but I'll say it again. Every day across the globe, helicopters are saving lives and protecting property. They help to keep the critical infrastructure up and running, and they guard the environment. And so many more accomplishments, I can't even list them here today. Our industry is truly amazing, but I think we need to be realistic in the thought that we can always improve what we're doing, both in terms of safety and effectiveness. So how do we approach that? Well, as many of you know, when I came to HI last year, I made it very clear that I consider collaboration as a key priority, a key enabler, and to ensure the success of our industry. We all have our specific skill sets. We all have those things that we're good at, but let's face it, we also know that together we are better than we are individually. This certainly applies to our industry. An overarching focus on cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships can pay off for all of industry. Through collaborative work, we give ourselves the opportunity to leverage combined strengths and experiences. With a team approach, we can gain insights to the actions we can all take to improve safety and efficiency. We can identify best practices. We can share experiences on how to best employ new and safer technologies. And as a team, we can build programs that serve us all in terms of harmonization and standardization. So I tell you that these things are not as a lecture on working together, but more to set the stage for some of the initiatives we have going on at HAI for you. For the past year, HAI team has been building momentum in terms of international collaboration and partnerships. We think the results will pay huge dividends for all of industry. I'd like to share with you a couple of examples of what we have going on. Starting in July 2020, several leading organizations across the rotorcraft industry have been meeting regularly in a spirit of cooperation and unity of effort. The HAI International Partnership Program, or IPP, as Chris so rightfully named it, was established with the vision of providing the opportunity for the vertical lift industries to meet, to share stories and concerns, to identify priorities, to discuss what's going on, and most importantly, what we could do to do things better. The IPP provides a venue for us to take an industry-wide approach, and more importantly, for us to develop industry-wide solutions to our common issues and our priorities. It goes without saying that all of the IPP members are united in the idea that communications with and connection to the industry is essential. And that is one of the main reasons for launching of the IPP International's Leaders Webinar Series that you are watching right now. It is our hope that you will gain benefit from hearing from the leaders in our industry who are working so hard to create impactful programs and solutions. Our goal is to share what we know and to address the topics that are important to you. That said, I have to emphasize that you, the industry, have a major part in this as well. There are several international rotorcraft organizations that support your efforts. It doesn't matter whether you are an operator, a manufacturer, or a service provider, you are all critical stakeholders in our industry. Getting involved with these organizations gives you the chance to let them know what you're experiencing and what you need to be successful. It gives you the chance to share your thoughts on improving safety, addressing regulatory burdens, or just sharing your insights. Bottom line is get involved and let your voice be heard. I can promise you that that's the kind of information that is valued by the IPP organizations and all the speakers today. Let's talk a little about safety. The other important area of recent focus has been on the effectiveness of the international vertical flight safety programs that support our industry. As you may know, there are several regional safety teams that provide exceptional support to the operators in your regions. These teams do a great job and have really produced positive results for the industry, particularly in terms of understanding safety issues and trends and helping in the creation of effective safety programs to address or mitigate those issues. They do a noteworthy job in their primary goal of representing you and being your voice that promotes safety, professionalism, and innovation. I suspect that you have been all benefited in one way or another from their work, whether it has been through the use of published safety information, safety studies, databases, safety tools, and a wide variety of other resources. The regional safety team creates these with you in mind, all designed for you to use in your operations and your safety programs. However, the unfortunate reality is that we struggle in our efforts to coordinate safety programs internationally. Believe me, it's not a reflection of the great work that's going on out there by so many people. It is, however, a reflection of challenges associated with managing a diverse international industry. So how does that impact us? Well, the result is that we miss out on valuable opportunities to share information, opportunities to understand the challenges being realized in other parts of the world, and most importantly, opportunities to develop harmonized solutions that could provide benefit to everyone globally. Collecting data is hard sometimes, but it's even harder to collect data that everyone can use or access. We have several issues with data in our industry. Far too often, we see valuable information being unnecessarily siloed. In other cases, the data is gathered is incompatible with other data and prevents us from conducting meaningful comparisons. Helicopters do so many different missions out there. We have to try to understand how we can use the data appropriately. We see some data being redundantly collected and other important data sets not being collected at all. That's just data. We also see inefficiencies across the regional safety teams due to several reasons that include limited staffing and resources. The fact is, sometimes these teams could use some help. We need to do better. We can do better. The proposed solution to this is the restructuring of what you remember as the International Helicopter Safety Team, or more recently, the International Helicopter Safety Foundation, into a new and more effective organization. The vision is to create an organizational structure that enables us to expand on the already existing public-private partnerships in order to improve the safety of global flight operations in all segments of the vertical flight industry. We are very excited about this restructuring. The name of this modernized organization is the Vertical Aviation Safety Team, or VAST. The overarching goal of the VAST remains aligned with the legacy International Helicopter Safety Team / Foundation. That is the prevention of all fatal accidents and the reduction of global accident rate in the vertical flight community. The VAST will use a data-informed and consensus-based approach to better collect, analyze, and distribute aviation safety information. Through analysis of the data and leveraging of the benefits of collaborative environment that includes all regional safety teams, the VAST will help to develop effective risk reduction strategies and programs. The regional safety partners will not change. Regional safety teams will continue to do what they have always done, and regional stakeholders will as well. The main goal of the VAST will be to assist those regional safety partners in those efforts. Let me share a slide with you. If Dan can pull up the VAST slide. As you know, there are many unique sectors of the vertical lift industry. We get that, but those unique sectors don't need to be separated as they have been in the past. On the top, you see the logos of several of the leading international vertical lift organizations, and on the left, you see representation of many of the states that have regional safety teams. On the right are depicted just a few of the many industry stakeholders that are so important to safety and success of industry. And in the center is the VAST. The key point to understand is that within the VAST governance structure resides a cadre of advisors that are committed to providing guidance to the regional safety partners and assisting in the facilitation of regional programs as necessary. The VAST is not regulatory in nature, nor does it direct any of the efforts of the regional safety teams. That is not the purpose. The VAST will always advise and will help in the efforts of the regional safety teams, help in the efforts of the regional safety teams and the industry stakeholders. At times, it may even assist in identifying resources to help with those safety initiatives. The VAST will exist to help. The efforts of the VAST will foster international relationships and will strengthen partnerships across many stakeholders. The importance as it will drive cooperation, which will support standardization and harmonization across industry. The major international function of the VAST will be the management of working groups. These groups will be established as needed to address such topics as technology globally, safety promotion globally, and regulations and standards globally. These working groups will consist of volunteers from across the international industry and focus attention on the coordination and identification of collection and analyzation of data, as well as the promotion of results and other information. A lot of the work on the promotion that you've seen in the last few years with the International Helicopter Safety Team and the Foundation. The objective is for the products of the working groups to be available for the entire industry globally to assist in the enhancement of safety, efficiency, and effectiveness of the global VTOL operations. We know we are going to grow in the VTOL area. We know because of how much we bring to society today, and we are going to expand that in the future. Finally, and huge importance, is the staffing for everything I've discussed here will come from the international industry. From the organizations you see listed here, as well as the rest of industry. This will truly be an international team effort that will drive VTOL safety to the highest levels. As I said earlier, we're excited about the collaboration initiatives, and those still come together. One of the examples where I think our collaboration efforts have made a difference in our industry's response to the COVID pandemic. As I stated earlier, I believe we all realize that the pandemic has had a real impact on our operations. I think one of those impacts has been the effect it has on our program management. In a sense, it has forced us to take a hard look at how we do business, how we operate, to identify those critical priorities which we need to keep in focus. It has provided us the motivation to work together as an industry to help us address some of these very harsh issues our society is encountering globally. I'm happy to be here today to discuss our perspective on the benefits of partnership and cooperation. But as Chris has stated at the opening, following me, we have presenters with real world examples of how the international partnerships and the collaboration has helped our industry make a meaningful contribution to the COVID pandemic response. I look forward to the presentations that are following right now by our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jim. I would now like to introduce to you Mr. Peter Muller, Chairman of the European Helicopter Association. Peter, if you could bring your screen up, please, sir.
So you should see me now.
There you are. All right, fantastic. And Dan is going to bring up your slides. Welcome, sir, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I can see my slides coming up. So Jim and Chris, thank you very much for inviting us to this webinar concerning the collaboration of the international VTOL industry in this unparalleled pandemic. You already introduced me, so I just add some facts. I'm 65 years old and I'm the chairman of the European Helicopter Association. And my background is more than 44 years of experience as helicopter pilot, operations and crew training manager in military and civil helicopter operations. With our short presentation, we would like to show you with a few examples what EHA and its members did and still do while we speak to support the European society during these challenging times. Next slide, please. EHA represents the helicopter community in 11 countries, in 11 European countries. Our members are the National Helicopter Associations, Heli Offshore representing the global offshore industry, the OEMs Airbus, Bell, Leonardo, Robinson, Safran, and some supporting and associated members. In some countries, there are no national helicopter associations established. In this case, it is possible for an operator to become a direct member of the European Helicopter Association. Our mission, in a few words, is to strive for the interests of our members in the fields of operational safety, a framework of rules applicable to our daily operations, and being economically reasonable, and for the growth and sustainability of the sector. Next slide, please. At the end, as the pandemic started to develop early 2020, we established on our homepage a section where we collected all the relevant information concerning updated regulations published by EASA, best practices developed by our members on national level to make this useful information available to all our members in Europe. Access link is displayed on this slide. Next slide, please. We collaborated in several working groups with the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, the European regulatory body for aviation, to develop policies which should support the industry during the pandemic. Luckily, for the helicopter industry, the corruption corrupting influence of the pandemic did not hurt the helicopter industry as wide and as dramatic as it did for the airline industry, meaning most of the guidelines and recommendations developed by EASA targeted the airline industry. Next slide, please. Helicopter emergency medical services played a major role in the field of European collaboration by means of helicopters. The vast majority of helicopter types used for HAMS operation in Europe are the Airbus helicopters 135 and 145. Therefore, we put this slide as an example into our presentation to show how all the OEMs contributed to support the operators mastering the challenges of the pandemic by providing necessary equipment like cabin cockpit separation and procedures concerning disinfection of the aircraft as an example. Next slide, please. In the next slides, I'm gonna speak about several European operators who contributed to healthcare and other relief services in their countries, but also across the European borders. DRF is the Deutsche Rettungsflugwacht, or in English, German Air Rescue, one of the two big HAMS operators in Germany. In 2020, DRF did a total of almost 40,000 HAMS missions. Almost 700 of them were related to COVID-19. 86 missions were cross-border missions from Germany to France, to Switzerland and Austria. 21 of them directly related to COVID-19. Next slide, please. ADAC Air Rescue is the second big HAMS operator in Germany and the founding operator of the HAMS system in Germany. It belongs to the German Automobile Club and started the operation of the first HAMS helicopter 50 years ago. In 2020, the ADAC did almost 52,000 HAMS missions on 37 bases. More than 800 of those missions in 2020 were related to COVID-19. About 640 of the special COVID-19 missions transporting infected patients were done by an additional provided helicopter with specialized equipment called Christoph 112. Some of these missions were executed to pick up patients in France. Additionally, the ADAC medical team supported the German military services in Italy during their medical relief mission. Personnel of the police helicopter squadrons were trained in the ADAC HAMS Academy on how to care for COVID-19 patients. Next slide, please. French HAMS helicopter operators and the French Civil Protection Helicopter Fleet also perform transport of COVID-19 patients inside France, but also to Germany. Next slide, please. In the northwest of France, in the region of the Normandy, helicopters were tasked to transport vaccines and vaccination teams to remote islands close to the coastline of the French mainland. Using helicopters was the only solution to transport the vaccines without interrupting the cold chain. Next slide, please. It never rains, but it pours. Additionally to the pandemic, the southeast of France was hit by a severe storm in October 2020. Roads, bridges, and power plants and power lines were destroyed, and people had to be evacuated from their destroyed homes. Around 60 helicopters were supporting the relief missions, and amongst those were two foreign Super Pumas, one from Heli Austria, based in Austria, and one from Heli Swiss, coming from Switzerland. The mission to build up the infrastructure is still going on. Next slide, please. Heli Austria, having supported the relief missions in France, is a direct member of the European Helicopter Association. It's a typical family-owned alpine operator executing all kinds of special operations, commercial air transport, HAMS operations in Austria, in Italy, and in Iceland, using many different types of helicopters like the MD-900 Explorer, the 135, the 145, the 130, the Bell 212, AS355, and as you have seen, the Super Pumas. Next slide, please. In Italy and in other countries, Leonardo's 139 and 169 and the 101 helicopters are the forefront of the activity to provide assets for the safe transport of COVID-19 patients. The 139 and the 169 are used for medical care operations in several regions of the country, while the Italian Air Force has also been using the 101A Caesar, which is a variant of the 101 for transporting patients since the beginning of the pandemic. The installation of the biocontainment solution supported by Leonardo completely isolates pilots and passengers while ensuring functionality and airworthiness. To integrate this solution, Leonardo has been able to use versatile components that have been adapted to create life-saving equipment, such as power supply and ventilation systems, the same as those used in the hospital intensive care units. Next slide, please. I want to conclude my presentation with a few slides of my former employer, Luxembourg Air Rescue. Luxembourg Air Rescue is a private operator executing HAMS and police missions with a fleet of 6 MD Explorer helicopters for HAMS and humanitarian missions and 2 145 helicopters for police operations. 6 Learjet 45 are operated for global ambulance missions. In 2020, the company did about 2,061 HAMS missions and 800 hours flight time of humanitarian aid missions in the Mediterranean Sea with helicopters, and a total of about 490 ambulance missions with the fixed-wing fleet. The latter number is extremely low due to the pandemic, as the number of travelers decreased dramatically during this time. Next slide, please. I included this map for our non-European spectators to show you where you can find this tiny country. Luxembourg is quite small. It has only 630,000 citizens, and the distance from the north to the south border is only 82 kilometers, and from the east to the west, it's only 57 kilometers. About 48% of the Luxembourgish population belong to one of the 170 different nationalities which are living peaceably together in Luxembourg. The reason I mentioned these numbers is to explain to you that it is quite a normality for Luxembourgish companies to collaborate on international level. This explains also why almost 50% of the HAMS missions are executed from a base in Luxembourg, but 2 destinations in Germany, France, and Belgium. Next slide, please. The international attitude of Luxembourg Air Rescue led to the offer to support neighbor countries during the pandemic. Till this day, more than 50 COVID-19 patients have been transported from France to hospitals in Luxembourg or Germany by the Luxembourg Air Rescue rotor-wing and fixed-wing fleet, when there were no more intensive care beds available in France anymore. A number of European COVID-19 patients have been repatriated from Africa to hospitals in their European home countries by the Luxembourg Air Rescue fixed-wing fleet. Luxembourg offered 11 intensive care beds in Luxembourgish hospitals to French COVID-19 patients. Medical teams from Luxembourg Air Rescue were flown to Portugal at the peak of the pandemic to support in Portuguese hospitals. And the last slide, please. Because of the immediate neighborly support, Luxembourg Air Rescue and its partner DRF German Air Rescue were granted the Konrad Adenauer de Gaulle Award to pay tribute to the enormous professionalism and solidarity shown by both organizations in transporting French patients with COVID-19 to German and Luxembourgish hospitals and back as special sign of neighborly help in Europe. As the above examples of international collaboration show us, helicopters are not just a perfect technical tool, but also a means to bring nations closer together in their joint effort to overcome this pandemic and other catastrophe. Thank you for your attention, and back to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Our next panelist is going to be Mr. Tim Fashon from the British Helicopter Association. Tim, would you please join us and take the floor?
And Chris, can I have my slides, please?
Yes, sir.
Hi there. I'm Tim Fauchon, ex-military pilot, started on the aircraft that is behind Jim and finishing on one of those that Peter mentioned, the 101. It was Augusta Westland in those days. I'm now the CEO of the British Helicopter Association, and one of my important duties is chairing the EASA Rotorcraft Committee on behalf of EHA. Slide. What's happened in UK? Well, the normal operations has occurred for the North Sea. Very much the slight downtick in activity has been taken up by the operators having to social distance the passengers. So overall, the mission rate has stayed almost the same. Before the next downturn, I think, hopefully the oil price will recover to around $64 a barrel, and we will have a normal exploration, and therefore we will retain operations there. HEMS and police very much have kept going their normal operations throughout the pandemic. Infrastructure support has as well, pipeline inspections, firefighting and such like. But the one market that really has taken a hit is the training and the charter market, as far as we're concerned. Somewhere around 25% of the normal yearly turnover. Slide. So very early on in the pandemic, one of my operators contacted me and said, well, what's the BHA going to do? Are you just going to sit out the pandemic? And we thought about it, myself and the chairman, got a few ex-military guys in, and we thought about, well, what would happen normally, because it was all over the news that the military were deploying helicopters around the country. So we thought, well, why don't we offer to the government civilian helicopters? And we set up a scheme called the Helicopter Aid to the Civil Authorities, HACA, nicking the name from MACA, which is the military aid to the civil authorities. It's a reverse MACA as far as I'm concerned. And very soon, quickly, we talked to the Civil Aviation Authority. You weren't going to get anywhere without their sort of authorization. What they then did is pass it up to the Department of Transport, who is their government agency, and then it went into the Cabinet Office, who was responding with the UK's resilience planning throughout the pandemic. That whole step, because you're working with fairly junior people, took about a week. That was the most frustrating stage of our reaction. Slide. So what did we do? We started out straight away with a social media message, only used one platform via a well-known news agency. And what throughout our planning philosophy has always been plan for the worst and you just hope for the best. We didn't want anyone to use us because that really meant that the normal system was breaking down. We started on the 20th of March, 2020, 4 days after the UK went into a real hard lockdown. Very quickly, within a week, we realized we couldn't just limit it to BHA members, and we opened it to the whole industry. And we now have an enormous database of aircraft, pilots, hangarage, and very importantly, off-airport fuel from the whole industry and private owners. It has been a really big job to collate that database. And actually, we were so successful that the government asked us to do the fixed wing response as well. We could get nowhere without tying ourselves into the military liaison officer network, because that is where the civil authorities go first, and that's all they think about. We'll ask the military to do the job. But the MACA rules, the military aid to the civil authority rules, state that they have to ask the civilians first if they can do it. Before, there was no way for them to do that, but now there is a central point. My phone is where they have to come and ask, can you do it? And what also very importantly is we are tied in to the other blue light services, the ambulance authority, the Coast Guard, and the search and rescue, and the police. Slide. Very quickly, the CA gave us some stipulations. We could only do daylight ops, and the reason that is no one knew what the response was going to be. And what they didn't want us to do is to be going into a hospital with an AOC operator, a normal charter operator, meeting a search and rescue aircraft coming the other way on MVG. So they said daylight only ops, and you can only use AOC operators. No, mainly because they can run everything through their SMS. However, we've never tested fully the CA's flexibility, because they did say, if you get backed into a corner, Tim, we will look at what you want to do. And they have been very flexible. I'll cover that later. They said no COVID positive passengers or patients. They put in place very, very quickly exemptions for screens. No, we didn't get the level of PPE that medical people have. So we thought, well, how can we protect the pilots from people that we don't know if they're COVID positive or not, the passengers? So they said, okay, go out there, put screens, send them in to us, pictures, the diagrams and everything. And we don't need to come to the site. If you think it is secure, we will look at each case and we will give you an exemption to allow you to do it without going through any design process. Very quick, that was put in within 2 days. Now, what took me the most time was sorting out the payment with the government and getting a contract to do this whole thing. As you appreciate, a one-man helicopter operation cannot wait for the National Health Service. Their normal bill payment is 6 months. That isn't going to work for someone who's forked out the tune of maybe £20,000 on a mission and having to wait for 6 months for his bill to be paid. That's what took us. We started with a 74-page document. I ended up with a 14-page document that even a pilot can read, and a guarantee of payment, which would be within 2 weeks. That 2 weeks did get stretched, I might add. Slide. There it is, 29th of April, my phone went off. Can you move 7 people from the London Nightingale Hospital up to the north of UK, because they couldn't go by normal public transport, to do an inspection of the Nightingale that was set up there? And I'll explain what a Nightingale. The Nightingale were big buildings round UK that were put into a temporary hospital mode. They had ventilators, they had as if it was an ITU, but one was a place that a lot of people have been, which was the Excel Centre in London, where the helicopter show in UK used to be held. That was turned into a Nightingale with about 3,000 beds. So we were asked to take the team from there up to Sunderland to inspect their Nightingale, to give special advice, all in a day, there and back. We used 2 109s. Why? 7 passengers, because we had to do social distancing. in the back of the aircraft. Slide. What else has happened? We've been asked to do firefighting, load lifting, including a car and 170 tons of aggregate during a breach of a canal. We do turn tasks down though. No, the whole of the contract says that I have to provide value for money. And a lot of times when you look at the task, you think we're just being used as a very expensive truck here. So take a bit longer and get it there by truck. We do not warrant the money that you would have to spend sending it 2 hours earlier, maybe. So we turned down PPE and we turned down ventilator parts, only because ventilator parts was being done by a Formula One company. And I said, you could put it in one of your cars and get it down the road an hour quicker than us. At the moment, what are we waiting on? We're waiting on putting a cooling unit onto the roof of a hospital. Well, that's where the CA's flexibility has come in. Normally, they would expect you to clear the building, but they said, obviously in a hospital, you can't do that. We will look at your safety case and it's in a built up area. We will consider it once you've written your safety case. We are just waiting for the hospital to come back to us. Slide. What are we doing now? We've developed a COVID positive capability with one of the operators. The Coast Guard very quickly saw that they needed the capacity down the southeast of England to take the pressure off certain hospitals where the Kent variant of the pandemic was happening. So what was happening was that critical patients would be transferred from the southeast of England to regions that had more ITU beds available. So what we did with a well-known operator, we developed a COVID positive capability for the aircraft. The Coast Guard were doing it with their normal aircraft, a spare one, and also a lot of the HEMS unit started doing it as well as a secondary role. We especially were asked, well, what can we do with the AOC aircraft, the non-COVID positive capability? And we repositioned the medical transfer teams. Now, if you're a HEMS pilot, you'll know that quite often the patient needs to be handed across in the ITU, and that can take up to about an hour and a half. There's no point in keeping the Coast Guard or the HEMS aircraft sat on the pad. Why not transfer them in a normal AOC aircraft? So we were being asked to do that. And the last one is distribution of vaccines. And I'm just going to go a bit further into that. Now, we were asked to stand by the government to look at vaccine distribution, especially during the winter, if the road network and the rail network shut down due to a spell of snow or ice. Now, I appreciate other parts of the world are now going into their winter and they might like to look at it. So slide. Most small operators don't have a dangerous goods approval. And one of the vaccines, the Pfizer, needs extremely low temperatures and therefore is usually transported on dry ice. That needs a dangerous goods approval. Well, the CAA wrote to us, and as I said, our smaller AOC operators just don't have that approval. So within 2 days, the CAA wrote an exemption allowing my small AOC operators to be able to do it. They, of course, have to run it through their MSMS, do a bit of training. And they also stipulated that you needed to have CO2 monitors. Now, why do you have CO2 monitors? When dry ice sublimates, that, in other words, pilot speak, melts, you produce a lot of carbon dioxide, which is extremely toxic. So you need to have some monitors in the aircraft. Airbus have written some guidance, which is available on their website. They also, for their types, will give you type-specific guidance if an operator applies to them. Leonardo will just apply advice on application. So between the exemption from the CAA and the two European OEMs, we have a means of transporting vaccines on dry ice. Hopefully, you'll never get there. You will be able to distribute most of the vaccines without using dry ice. And I only just learned today that an engineer in India is busy building a box that you can put in the back of a helicopter. And when we know about some more details, we will of course be sharing this with the EHA and AHAI so we can get it out there. Slide. Lastly, I would just like to say that I think the first major helicopter show is going to be Helitech Expo 2021 in XL. It's turning back from a Nightingale now on the 5th and 6th of October this year. Of course, HAI and European rotors will come after us. So back to you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Tim. Outstanding. Our final panelist for the webinar is Ms. Loreto Moraga, President of the Chilean Helicopter Association. Loreto, the floor is yours.
Hello, many thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. Well, I would like to share our experience here from Chile in South America. Now you can see the slides. Excellent, perfect. Well, based on this experience of pandemic, please, the next slide. Thank you. I would like to talk first about the context of the pandemic in our country. Yeah, a year ago, the Ministry of Health adopted a strategy based on the following. First, the acquisition of a large number of RT-PCR tests, of course, to know how many people was infected, a real number, the real situation. Second, the acquisition and manufacture of mechanical ventilators. Third, the creation of an integrated health network. In this country exists the public health network and the private. Yeah, but the authority decided to merge all capabilities and facilities and to integrate all our capabilities in one health network and have it available for this pandemic and emergency. And the last, and this is the one relevant for our industry, was the strategy of the inter-regional transfer of patients to maintain the intensive care unit bed capacity. Basically here, as you may know, our country is a very long thing place. The territory, we have the extreme in the north, yeah, and then the Patagonia in the south. So to distribute all the intensive care bed capacity, yeah, in the proper and prevent the collapse, yeah, we need to transfer the patients all the time. And for that purpose, the aerial support was basic. So to face this strategy and to execute it, a technical committee was formed to design the protocols and instruct when and where to distribute the patients. Please, the next slide. Well, on the other hand, on May 2020, other technical team was formed in the Ministry of Science to define the future acquisition of COVID-19 vaccines, distributing the purchase risk among several laboratories. The negotiations were held by another team, a political team, of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Basically here, the country looked for other countries which we have the free trade agreements. Yeah, Chile is a small economy and we have free trade agreements with a lot of partners. So we look basically for those partners to agree future purchase agreement of of vaccines. Yeah, so at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, these two teams work together, and basically that work, the payment of the warranties at due time to get those vaccines, and the use of the integrated health network allow us to start with the inoculation process, yeah, and implement it and execute it. Please, the next slide. So what was the role, yeah, the task that we assume as a Chilean Helicopter Association within this pandemic context? First of all, since the imposition of quarantines, the association contacted the authority. Yeah, first we wanted to be and to show the authority that we were available to help and support in every way they wanted. Yeah, at the same that Tim talked about his experience in his country, yeah, and in Europe, we did the same thing. Yeah, we wanted to be at the disposal of the authority. Of course, the bureaucracy is a very deep ocean, so it was very difficult to contact the appropriate people. Yeah, but we started that process. But unfortunately, at the very beginning, we were unaware of the existence of these technical committees in the Ministry of Science, in the Ministry of Health, and they were unaware, they were not aware about our existence of a Chilean Helicopter Association, yeah, available to inform and provide a connection with the operator. So in the first part of the pandemic last year, we didn't have a good communication and coordination. So we lose sometimes to face the first wave of the pandemic, but we learn from our experience. Please, the next slide. So, but what about the patient's transportation? Well, the medical committee that I mentioned, they decide that they see that the sanitization of the aircraft has some complications due to the corrosion that may be produced by the chemicals. Yeah, because an aircraft is not built at the same as an ambulance. Yeah, the ambulance is prepared for that mission only. Yeah, and the aircraft is not. So not only thinking in helicopters, in every kind of aircraft. So they decide to first, all the patients shall be transported using insulation chambers. Well, the insulation chambers that the country had at the beginning was only 13 units, yeah, acquired in 2014 to face the Ebola virus. We didn't have, yeah, hopefully, but the country at that time prepared and bought those 13 units that were all along distributed in the country. So first of all, this committee took the control of those units. Yeah, they collected all over the country, but also they contacted the local manufacturing industry to as well produce another units. Yeah, as you may see in this picture, you see an helicopter and an insulation chamber that was manufactured, produced in Chile. Well, another measure took by this medical committee was that the transportation of patients within the radius of 300 kilometers will be made by helicopters, and outside that will be made by fixed wing aircraft. Yeah, most of the transportation had been made by fixed wing aircraft by the Chilean Air Force, because as this country is very long, the flight used to be a long distance, yeah, at the very beginning of the pandemic. Now the situation is different, as I may tell you that. Please, the next slide. Well, but about the vaccine transportation, here the scenario is completely different. Yeah, given the arrival of Pfizer laboratory vaccines, the Health and Transportation Authority organized a logistic network, a huge logistic network to reach the entire country. The general aviation was organized by the Chilean Aviation Federation. Yeah, this is non-profit aviation. Yeah, and they contacted the authority to organize the network with the aviation clubs. They have 62 clubs as members. Yeah, they organize 400 aircraft, and also they invited us to be part of this collaboration program. Non-profit aviation, so the collaboration was volunteer, and the idea was to donate the flight hours. This is a big difference between the patient transportation and the vaccine transportation, because in the patient transportation is very critical. Yeah, they have protocols. Yeah, and the protocols are very strict. The aviation authority, they allow the operators to use the protocols and giving permission, being very flexible. But those operations are paid. They have a public bid to assign the contracts to transport the patients. Now we are facing a second wave, so the transportation now is very critical and important in this country. But in the case of vaccines, we have a very different situation. We wanted all to collaborate because the need to have a fast distribution of the vaccines was the main goal. Yeah, so we basically donate the flights because we're short flights as well. So was an effort, but something that we were available to do and we wanted to do. Nobody think it twice. They all want to help. Yeah, and we really, really are very proud for that decision of helping. Yeah, ATEL, our organization, supported by HIAE and IPP members, I can say, we asked for them to help us with information at that moment. And they responded very quickly, yeah, with protocols and with experience, yeah, which allowed us and our operators to be prepared on due time. Yeah, here I have to really and personally give my recognition to all of you and to team Fauchon, because I personally was expecting to receive an answer in 2 days, reasonable time. But I received an answer in 2 hours, yeah, from you, from the IPP network. And that was very, very useful because we could provide the information very quickly to all operators about how to transport vaccines in case we use the dried ice, for example. But also we provide that information to the authority and provide that information, we share that with the general aviation, with all these people donating flight hours. So the protocols and the information were very, very useful, not only for our members, but for all the community involved in this operation. Next slide, please. Well, during this pandemic, we have been able to experience the enormous utility of international collaboration. And the image that you can see here is the one that we love, because it was the first delivery of vaccines and to a little town, a very little town in a place in the south of the country, and everyone was expecting and cheering up the pilot when he took the box and delivered to the hospital director and nurse and police guys who were there. So we, in that moment, feel very, very happy and comfortable of doing this. Yeah, until now, 80 boxes of vaccines have been delivered by this program. Until now, 800 of patients have been moved by aircraft, I don't know exactly how many of them with helicopters. I think that now in the second wave, we are going to have more helicopter activity, but 800 people, yeah, in a country of 18 million is a lot of people, and no one has died during this transportation. So we are proud that we are applying correctly protocols and protecting as well the people who are working, yeah, in this transportation, the crew, yeah, and the nurses and the doctors. Yeah, so we feel that the collaboration, the support of the network, the technical work of the medical committees all together have been very, very important to have a successful operation of inoculation. Until now, and this month, we are going to reach 5 million people with vaccines in this country. And we expect to have the 90% of the people inoculated in June. Yeah, so it's a huge, huge challenge, logistic challenge, and we are happy to be part of that. So we know that we still have many challenges in this pandemic, and facing them with this network really is important support. And we know that we have a lot to do at the regional level, yeah, because we are not really connected between countries in South America, yeah, with Argentina, with Peru, with Brazil. They are having very critical situation with the hospital collapses sometimes. And we are not doing like in Europe, having this support within countries in the region. And that is something that we need to fix. Yeah, countries here are very huge with huge territories. Yeah, that's a difference between Europe and South America. But anyway, it is something that we need to change in the future. So we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do, but at least with this IPP network, we really, really can tell our experience and say that is very, very useful. We live that. So please, next slide. Thanks for this webinar. We are happy to share our experience. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Loreto. Very enlightening. If I could please ask our panelists to all come back up on screen just for a last moment here. There's Tim. Okay, fantastic. You know, as we close here, I wanted to sincerely thank each of our distinguished panelists for sharing their time, their knowledge, and the insights with us today. What an absolutely fantastic overview of the international cooperation that's going on out there. And more importantly, the impact that the work that each of your organization is having on the people that we serve. So thanks to each of you for being with us today and sharing your thoughts and your insights with us. To all of our attendees, we certainly hope you've enjoyed this webinar as well. And we hope you're able to gain a better appreciation of the great cooperative work that's going on out there every day. And finally, just a short note that our next International Partnership Program leadership webinar is planned for June. So when that time, we'll once again gather some of our top leaders from across the international vertical lift industry, and we'll take another look at what's going on. So again, thanks to everyone for joining us, and have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Be safe out there. Take care.